Welcome to the Parable Arrows podcast, where we wrestle with story to seek deeper truth. We believe that engaging with the art of the world can help us discern more of what God, as the true artist, is trying to reveal in the beauty of his story. Join us as we discuss movies, ideas, and practice engaging with art, God's word, our thoughts, and each other. Hey everyone, I'm Femi and I am going back in time.
Whoa, I'm Josh and I'm joining Femi going back in time.
And today we're discussing a summary and message of our subject film, Mufasa, the Lion King. For new listeners, we have this sort of breakdown called SMART, Summary, Message, Audience Rethink, and Theology, or a touch of the word. We want to make sure that people check out the episodes, but they're long, so we've broken them up into a couple pieces. So we're going to cover the summary and message in this one, and then we'll get into the other pieces in our other recordings. So note on why we picked out this film. This came about now 6 months ago since we recorded this because we had a recording mishap, but we wanted to touch on both Mufasa and the Lion King together. So we have about 6 episodes coming out soon with this. So getting into the summary for Mufasa, the Lion King, we're going forward in time to Simba, Nala, Kiara, and then back in time. So let's get into it with the summary. Kiara, Simba and Nala's daughter from the original Lion King, is waiting for a younger sibling to be born. Simba and Nala go off and leave her with Timon and Pumbaa and Rafiki. Rafiki starts to entertain her with the story of her grandfather. A young Mufasa is playing with his parents, and a rainstorm causes a flash flood. Mufasa's father tries to save him, but is caught up in the process, leaving Mufasa separated from his parents. He drifts along a river until he sees a young lion, Taka. Taka warns him against the rules of his tribe, that he needs to get out of the water because of an approaching alligator or crocodile. Playfully, Taka brings a starving Mufasa home, where Mufasa is denied inclusion. The terms seem to be set that they must race to see if Mufasa is worthy to be a part of their tribe. Pride. Mufasa is fatigued and still puts up a noble fight, and an impressed Taka lets him pass because he's always wanted a brother. They grow up with Taka under the men's tutelage and Mufasa learning hunting skills from the women, peace with nature, and active skills. Taka sits with the men and eats, but doesn't practice fighting or hunting, and so a threatening new lion pride comes and attacks. Simba saves his adopted mother, killing an outside lion, while Taka is shamed for his fear. Nonetheless, Mufasa is an outsider, so Taka is still the priority. When the new pride comes for revenge, Taka and Mufasa are forced to leave and escape to the land Mufasa's parents had told him about. Taka has to rely on Mufasa as his protector. Mufasa and Taka meet Zazu, Rafiki, and Sarabi on their journey. Taka seems to have a crush on Sarabi, and she seems impressed with Mufasa's skills. At one point, Mufasa saves Sarabi, but gives credit to Taka. Sarabi finds out and is even more enamored with Mufasa. The jealous Taka thinks he understands why outsiders were always banned by his pride. He finds the new pride and betrays Sarabi and Mufasa by leaving marks for them to track. This leads to both the arrival of their destination and the threat of the new attackers. A large battle ensues where Mufasa gathers the animals to band together as one community to protect their land. Taka feels guilty for all of his betrayal and helps to save Mufasa, but is scarred in the attempt. Mufasa is reunited with his mother, but indeed his father did sacrifice himself. Mufasa's bravery and leadership skills are what lead the animals to consider him their king. And then we jump back to the current time and see that Kiara understands more of her history and is eager to tell her new baby brother. Fanfare, amazingness, new child in the circle of life. But all of this story, all of this history has to mean something. So, Josh Cook.
Yes, sir.
What is the message of Mufasa, the Lion King?
Yeah. Well, I think for me, the big message that stood out was this idea of royalty and what makes a good king. So, according to the lore, Scar was supposed to be king, correct? And there's this new guy on the block, Mufasa, who shows up, and he actually earns the respect that should be inherently just kind of like given to the king. And so it made me think a lot about when we think of Christ, and especially I think it can sometimes make people upset when we see like kingship and kings and royalty and like, why does God need all this authority and stuff like that? But we see that if you have a good king, like good things happen. And if you have someone you can trust and rely on and go to, there's like peace and protection. Mm-hmm. But one of the lines I wrote down, I think this was from Scar's dad, is deceit is the tool of a good king. And so depending on how your king was raised or what you're worshiping as a king or queen or whatever, how that can impact how you live, how you handle your business, I think is really challenging. Yeah, so just that idea of like, what are the characteristics that make a good king? Not just, this, kind of like we talked in our Lion King episode. Mm-hmm. We know that Simba has the title of king, and he has to kind of earn it, and he has to kind of like come back and like take his responsibility. And so the same thing with Mufasa, and that seeing how he instills that then in Simba, that there is this kind of like, you don't just get this because you're, part of it is you get this responsibility because you're my son, but also like there are certain things that come with it that you need to be doing and leaning into. Yeah. How about for you? What were some messages or a core message that stood out to you?
I think that all the things you said about the characteristics of a king are the things that I also pulled of loyalty, virtue, sojourning faithfully, waiting faithfully, serving others. All of those things make the qualities of a good king. I think that I can't remember what the story was, but it was something around the lines of like, I can't be a good king, and the person saying, the thing that makes you a good king is the fact that you think you won't be good at it. Like that type of ability. Mm-hmm. Building a coalition is one of the hardest human skills, and to do that honestly and with integrity is something that I believe takes way more skill than doing it from fear or doing it from presenting a false dichotomy. I think some pastors will do that in negative ways. They'll be like, well, it's us against the world. And then people will be like, yeah. And then they'll have a big church, and the church almost always fails long term, either by becoming too insular or imploding, because there's just not a lot of good, strong leadership for all the things a good leader should be. It's led off a bad narrative. Same thing with politicians. And so I think the message of the movie of trying your best, doing the things, honoring your parents' memory for the good lessons they teach you, all of those things are honored. It's just really hard because Mufasa is sort of Superman. He does all of the things perfectly. If everybody had a son like Mufasa, like we wouldn't have these problems with like crappy men walking around.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit more about that, because I think, when we do kind of like our message sections and we are pulling out, okay, there's all this data and these pieces of information coming in from character development and things like that. Like some people might see that as like, oh, that's just like Mufasa, like he's just so great. But what could be potentially an unhealthy or unhelpful message that we could absorb from seeing that Mufasa is basically just kind of like you said, like Superman, like he just always does the right thing.
He's not as interesting. Mufasa as a character, because there's no development, there's a lot of struggles he faces, but he always does the right thing. So it's sort of like, regardless of what you put up in front of him, he's going to do the right thing. The thing that you could probably argue with, like by never calling Taka again and saying, I'm going to call you Scar from now on, which, retro. But the idea of him being somebody you can trust, that's not a bad thing. It just makes it for people who are actually sinful and fallible feel unattainable. Taka is more of an interesting character in the movie because he is in the powerful position, believes he is the king, realizes he doesn't have skills, likes this girl. The girl doesn't really quite like him back, betrays because he's so jealous, and then sort of comes around again. Like, that's a lot more interesting of an arc. And Scar in The Lion King compared to Taka here is just sort of always selfish. And this Taka seems to be at some points not selfish, at some points trying to make things work. So there's a character development there which makes it seem really interesting to me. But yeah, it's not helpful if you don't see yourself relating to the struggles of the main character. If the main character is too perfect, sometimes it doesn't feel like you can emulate those good qualities, because you would have to be perfect to emulate all of them. That would be a challenge there.
Yeah.
The good thing is it's something to always look up to.
Yeah, for sure.
You?
Yeah, I'm thinking one of the reasons that came to mind too is I think when we are talking about messages, and I feel like in a lot of the movies that we discuss, it's the imperfection of the characters that helps us not say like, oh, they're like me because I'm imperfect too, but rather to then like process things of like, okay, so like when they ran into this thing and they did this thing and it went wrong, how did they fix it? And like, what do we do? Like, that's the stuff that can be kind of helpful. But when we have a protagonist like Mufasa who is so perfect or basically does everything right, that we're just constantly going like, wow, that's unfair. Wow, that's unfair. I think on one hand, we can be jealous where we're like, dude, I wish my life went that well like all the time and I just got whatever I want. But I also wonder too if there can be potentially the pitfall of being like, well, I'm supposed to see myself in the main hero and the world is just really unfair to the main hero and he's doing everything. You know what? I think I'm doing everything right. Like, why is everyone against me? Like, why do I always keep kind of like being put in these positions where it's not fair and like, man, and so there's almost this potential. Like there's this potential for like, us. I would say even with like Superman, like he's just kind of, I don't know, like he's like anti-human, and we're like, I don't really see myself as you, but so with Mufasa, like being, even as an audience, like we need to be careful of like, not that this isn't a movie you should not watch because of that, but anything else or like you think from a message perspective that's important for our audience to maybe think through or like wrestle with if they watch this movie?
Yeah, it's okay to not be perfect. It's not okay to not reflect on your lack of perfection. Like if you know you're not perfect, which most people do because we have this common thing of New Year's resolutions and everybody can think of at least one. If you know you're not perfect, to reflect on it and go like, what can I do to be better is okay. To obsess about being better is not okay. Like, so you have to find that in this false spectrum that I'm pulling out here, from not caring about your flaws to caring way too much about your flaws, a middle ground of I am aware of my flaws, I make different plans, and I work on reducing the impact of my flaws. That's the healthier version of that spectrum. There's somebody who probably has a psychology or a psychiatry degree that knows more on how to speak to that. But you want to always be improving. The biblical element here that I would add is Mufasa, sort of like the story of Joseph. Except Joseph was a little arrogant in sharing his dreams. Joseph ends up being second in command, and then sort of plays with his brothers at the end. But he goes from bottom to top, and it's hard when we see people go through things as losing a parent and almost being kicked out of a pride and being relegated to what's considered lesser and protecting somebody and trying to set other people up and sacrificially doing this and sacrificially to both on the outside see that as all noble, but also realize you don't want any of that. Like, I would not want Joseph's life just because he ended up being second in command in Egypt. I would not want my brothers to throw me into a pit, sell me to, let's be real, my cousins, Ishmaelites coming from Ishmael, like my cousins, throw me in jail, be accused of sexual assault, be in jail for multiple more years, and then eventually be okay. I wouldn't want that, but it seems noble. Like, oh man, how Joseph stayed true to who God was. I'm sure there were some nights that Joseph was in jail like, man, I don't understand what's going on. Mufasa here, like his dad's gone. Like, is that really what you want for nobility? And that's just a common thing to think about in a movie like this, of when you see somebody who's always doing the right thing regardless of the hardship, remember that you want to always do the right thing, but most of us don't want any of the hardship. We want to always be able to do the right thing, and we want to be comfortable. We don't want to do the right thing when we're hurting and in pain and tired and hungry.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the challenge.
No, that's a great point. We don't want the hardship of doing the right thing, and in a broken world, that's exactly what is required, and like is the cost of doing the right thing. Like it often, it's not the like sugar coated, like, oh, we'll just do this and it'll be fine and whatever. It's like if you're gonna stand for what needs to be stood for with a godly and trusted perspective, like there's gonna be some cost involved, because this world is broken, and so goodness is the enemy of bad, and bad doesn't like it when people do good things.
Yeah.
So it is what it is.
Yeah.
So, any other thoughts?
No, just the same thing that we would normally say for a message. Like, look at all the character interactions and see all those character interactions and what they sort of tie to. And in this one, all the character interactions lean towards like nobility. You could even Rafiki sees Mufasa as a noble character, as somebody worth following. So just think about that with the story of what do all these things sort of tie into. And it seems in The Lion King is sort of stepping into your responsibility. In this one, it seems to like being a noble person, being a person of good character, like be a person of good character at all times. And things will go well for you. It might not always go well for you in real life, but like it will go well for you to be a person of good, noble character.
Totally.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for hanging with us. We'll see you in the next chunk.